Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today, our Accedo webinar regarding minimizing churn in a competitive OTT marketplace. My name is Vanessa. I'm marketing at Accedo, and just to do a few housekeeping items first, we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. This is open discussion, so we will look forward to your participation at the end. Please write your questions in the question panel that you should have in the GoToMeeting console, and we will run through those in sequential order. I'm first going to pass you over to introduce Michael Lance, who's our CEO at Accedo. Michael.
Thank you for this introduction, Vanessa. Thank you for participating in this webinar. This is a first for us at Accedo. One of the most common questions I get when I travel around the world is, why don't you at Accedo share knowledge and experiences from around the world? And my standard answer is, of course, that, well, it is difficult because, all of our customers, they have information that is under NDA, and it's very hard for us to sort of just share information about sort of what is happening on a customer-specific perspective. But then when we have discussed internally is that it is actually possible to share information on a more generic perspective. This is what we're doing here today. We have invited panelists who are opinionated and have great thoughts around sort of various topics. And if this works out well, we will proceed with additional webinars going forward where we discuss other topics. This first webinar is related to one of the most common questions I get. It's about how to minimize churn in the OTT environment, where it's easy to sign up, but it's also easy to discontinue a subscription. So that is, of course, a key area of concern for many of our customers and many companies in general in this marketplace. So I'm really excited to have the panelists joining me for this great discussion. But first of all, I just wanted to touch upon sort of our view at Accedo about churn, because obviously, as all of you know, we address this question from sort of a video experience perspective. So Accedo, I've put up this sort of logo here. Accedo is all about transforming the video experience, bringing out sort of the new way of experiencing a video service. And of course, that experience is key to improve customer satisfaction with the video service. And if you improve customer satisfaction with the video service, that will transform the churn to sort of a lower churn level going forward. So we believe that many aspects of low are actually related to the video experience. But I fully acknowledge that those are not the only aspects. So I'm looking forward to discussing other aspects. If you just move on to the next slide, Vanessa, and I'll just touch upon how we believe that it's possible to minimize churn. So one of the products that we have is called Accedo One, and that's a cloud platform that allows our customer to control the user experience in a dynamic way. And by doing that, then of course, it is possible to learn from customer behavior and actually measure what is working, what is not working, because the key question here is what is really working, and no one knows until you've tested it out from your own consumers that are working with your video experience platform. And of course, Accedo as a company, we have opinions about what should be working. We're happy to test that out with you. But the benefit with having a cloud platform like Accedo One is that it's cheaper and faster to test new ways of interacting with the video experience. So that platform is our key opportunity to address the video experience challenge. So I won't take too much time here to to talk about Accedo's specific offerings in this area. We're obviously happy to talk about that at another point in time. But instead, I'd like to get started on the panel discussion by introducing the panelists. So let me first hand over to Ben Keane, who's the moderator of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Vanessa, are you wanting to say anything else? No, I'll just kick on. So my name's Ben Keane. I'm an independent analyst and advisor. I was formerly the chief analyst for technology, media and telecoms at IHS, and before that, chief analyst at Screen Digest. And I remember meeting Michael when Accedo was just at its very beginning of its story. So been very interesting to watch that journey as it has developed. So you can see on the screen right now some of the takeaways we hope you will get from this session today, and we're going to dive into some of the topics. So if you move on one, please, Vanessa. So obviously, churn is part and parcel of the pay TV or the subscription video experience. It is inevitable. If you gain subscribers, you are at some point going to lose some subscribers as well. So it's been always part of the story. Now, historically, I would say that pay TV operators like Sky in the UK, for example, have been amongst the best performing as far as churn metrics in the world. If we look at the most recent data, Sky's annualized churn for 2017 was 11.5%, which is actually rather worse than the figure it achieved in 2015, which was just under 10%. So in other words, churn has got worse. But when you compare traditional pay TV to over-the-top services, you find very different patterns, and you find that in fact monthly churn rates as opposed to annualized churn rates can be very much worse. So what are the kind of factors that affect churn? Well, they're all the factors that affect the service in the market generally. So how good is the content offer? How does the pricing stack up? How is the user experience? And particularly, how does your service compare to that of the competitors? So those are the key variables. But today, we're going to look at some of the ways that you can combat some of the negative aspects and take proactive and constructive strategies to reduce churn. So if you move on, please, Vanessa. So these are the kind of topics we're going to discuss. But let me start by throwing the ball over to Geronimo from Jump TV, who is going to give us a quick snapshot of Jump's approach to this whole question of churn. So perhaps move on to the speaker slides, please, Vanessa.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Accedo, for inviting me to this webinar. And it's really interesting topic. We at Jam, what we do is we are an advanced analytic cloud solution for video service providers, being able to get deep insights about their audience and content, and being able, what is even more important, to impact on user conversion, retention, and engagement. As part of this whole process, as you can imagine, churn management is one of our core products and our core solutions that we are actually working with several tier ones video service providers around the world. And as a summary, I think when you look at churn, one of the key messages I really like to put on the table is that it's an iterative process. So churn management and churn reduction is not magic at all. So there's a lot of different ways and different angles you can approach to the challenge. But what it's really important is that to understand that it's something that you start and you will never stop, as had been discussed here. You have new users, and fortunately, users and audience want or just need to leave your service. So I will summarize, and we will tackle this along the webinar. That I would separate like in three main areas when you look at churn management. One is the first step. It's gaining insights about your audience. So you need to understand what is the customer lifetime value of your audience, what is the level of engagement, what's the content type that they like, the genres, and a lot of other aspects. And it's really important because it's the starting point for really putting in practice some of the different techniques and strategies that we will talk further. The second one is, once you know your audience, you need to be able to predict how likely is these segments of people to leave your service. So there are several techniques around this area that are available today as a very cost-effective way to use machine learning and AI to very, very specifically attack the prediction and what is even more important, understanding which are the main influences for your audience to live. So you are aware of what your audience really matter the most, and you will in a good position for defining actions. And that links with the third one, that is exactly impacting at the high risk audience first in ways that you can really influence their future retention behavior, and you will be able to really reduce churn and increase engagement, and also doing for the people that have already left, doing welcome back campaigns. So that's what we typically work with our customers. That's what we do. We will go deeper along the session. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you.
So, Anshul, what kind of perspective does Google bring to this topic?
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Accedo, for inviting me for this opportunity. I've just recently actually joined Google Cloud, and I look after the media sales for Google Cloud and EMEA. And prior to that, I used to head the product for online video for Ericsson. For Google Cloud, the focus has been, and we help our customers, which are essentially mainly media companies, focus on delighting audiences everywhere. We do it with three key factors. First is our end-to-end service capabilities available on Google Cloud that will help our customers launch services quicker, faster, and test them across the value chain. The second is the scale, the availability of Google Cloud in different regions. And the third one, and a key differentiator for us, is the machine learning capabilities that we bring across the workflow that helps provide the insights and analytics on the user behavior and helps taking better decisions based on that. Thank you. I look forward to a good discussion.
Thanks, Anshul. So just so we're all on the same page here as far as this topic is concerned, what is the definition of churn we should all be using here? Maybe Geronimo, I'll start with you on that topic.
Yes, thanks. Okay, so that's a good question, because I typically found that probably if you ask different people, all of us probably are going to answer differently. So it depends of really what you want to address and what is more important to you. But I will say that the most natural definition, and that's not the only valid, of course, is that you need to address how many cancellations you have in a given month. And of course divided by the average of number of users that you have in a given month. And average because of course you get new users and you lost some customers. So that's the most easy and straightforward and I would say the most common applied definition of churn. But I would love to hear others definitions if you have also if you have some of them.
Michael or Anshul, do you have any different views, or are you're happy with that one?
Well, as I think from my perspective, I just wanted to comment that I think there are two types of churn, right? So one is when the subscription is actually ending, and that's of course concerning because then you don't get any revenues anymore. But what is important is that there is another type of churn, which is the usage churn. Essentially, a person who's stopped using the service. They are still sort of a subscriber, but they are stopped using the service, or maybe significantly stopping the usage. Maybe the usage is only once per month from being sort of once per day earlier. And I think that's that's a churn warning for sort of the revenue churn at a later stage. And I think it is important to look at that as well.
So that's a usage factor as opposed to a pay factor.
Exactly.
What about the difference between, I mean, you sort of hinted at it there, Michael, but the difference between voluntary and involuntary churn, because those are quite important concepts here as well, right? Geronimo, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's one of the first differentiators that you need to really split when you look at churn, because essentially the ways to really address the challenge is completely different. So, I mean, involuntary churn that is typically related with payment, with the credit cards updated or any other methods that people is not aware that they are about to stop paying, but the fact is that they stop. So there's I would say that that's not, I would not like to say that it's the easiest scenario, but I think it's probably more straightforward to address it, because you can really put strategies and moral strategies, even operational processes, to really be on top of that, and contact the people that is about to to get payments updated, and try to renew them, or even put some extras for them to not take the opportunity to really churn. That it's probably the problem with involuntary churn, is that there's people that are still paying, and even they are not aware that they are paying, and at some point if you contact them, they will stop it. But anyway, if this is the case, this is a low engagement customer, and you definitely need to do something. So and that's the involuntary. And the other case is when it's more complex, because it's more related with the, as Michael said, with engagement and with the level of activity that these people is having across the journey, and how engaged they are with your catalog, with your user experience, also with the other competitors that at some point they are gonna even use in parallel, and they at some point will choose, and it's more challenging. But definitely involuntary versus voluntary churn is one of the first things to address in, I would like to say that very completely in different way.
I think only thing I would add is I agree completely with Michael and Geronimo. I think, and they're different, as we know, for churn, there's no standard definition across the industry. People call it proactive, reactive churn. And as Geronimo was saying, that I mean, for subscription-based services, it's easier to know when the monthly payment or quarterly payment is coming out, and there are ways to tackle that. But for proactive kind of ways, where you have to look at user behavior and what kind of service were they consuming, that becomes a bit more tricky. And that's where I think and that affects not just the subscription-based services, but also advertising-based services. Because if the customer is not paying for the service, it's hard to calculate in some ways what the level of churn is.
I mean, I mentioned in my introduction that typically churn rates in traditional pay TV tend to be somewhat lower than in the over-the-top world. Even with some of the most popular over-the-top services. What do you think are the factors there? Is it just about the fact that traditional pay TV is often charged on an annualized basis and measured on an annualized basis, rather than the monthly options that come with over-the-top stuff? Or do you think there are other factors? Michael, what do you think?
I think there are other factors. So over time, I'd expect that pay TV churn and OTT churn would level out approximately the same levels. But right now, obviously, the pay TV churn is very much related to the fact that you have been you're tied up to your box, which may have been a challenge to install, or you may have needed to book an installer, and there is equipment and so on. And that's, of course, adds both a challenge to sign up consumers, of course, but once they've signed up, they tend to stay loyal because they don't want to have the hassle. In OTT, the whole point with OTT is that it's really quick and easy to sign up, and then you tend to end up with these people who are very quick in and out, and it's not the same consumers as would sign up to pay TV services. So I think there are fundamentally differences here, but of course, you can easily imagine that in a 10-year perspective, the differences between sort of traditional pay TV and the pay TV operators and sort of the more of an OTT operator, they will sort of overlap more and more, and the differences in churn will likely not be as high. I'd expect that Sky's churn would go up. I don't know how Sky's pure OTT offering would stack up to their sort of pay TV offering, but I can probably bet my right hand that the churn levels of the OTT offering is higher than the traditional pay TV offering, and I think that would certainly be the case going forward as well. So I think there are fundamental differences there. I do think, and it would be interesting to hear the other sort of speakers as well in terms of involuntary churn versus voluntary churn. Obviously, in a sort of credit card scenario, or even in markets where you don't have credit cards, when you're signing up, the credit card expiration or sort of the other sort of payment concerns would probably be a pretty substantial reason for consumers churning, because they get that natural end of the subscription, and at that point in time they discover, well, I didn't use this service that much, so maybe I won't sort of renew it. So I think there is an aspect of tying in sort of user behavior, and just ahead of sort of that natural sort of end of life for a credit card or for any other payment model, and you're trying to sort of capture those consumers to carry them over that sort of bridge over the payment hurdles. And in pay TV, that has never been a problem, because it's typically direct debits or invoicing or anything else that would sort of be more reliable over time. But I'd love to get everyone else's opinion about that as well.
That's a good point, Michael. Essentially, I want to share an experience that is linked with this. We had a customer in Australia with a sports-based OTT service, where essentially they face this situation very regularly, because they have a season pass, they have also monthly pass, weekly pass. So when we were with them and we analyzed the different churn management strategies, we land in one of the combat tactics for the voluntary churn. It was about defining a discount of the different passes if you, as a customer, move for longer period of subscription. So if you will get for a seasonal pass, you will get a higher discount compared if you just pay month by month. And the rationale behind that is exactly that the cost for you to really manage all the and the probability of these people to just forget about payment renewals justify totally the cost of the discounts that you can provide for customers to encourage them to upgrade to more long-term subscription periods compared with just the short-term ones. So in terms of involuntary, I think one of the definitely areas to test, because each customer is different and each market is different, is definitely to make the business case about the cost of putting a discount of your subscription packages depending on how long the customer is able to commit with you as a video service provider. So that's interesting topic.
Anshul, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that I totally agree. And I think the additional aspect, what we have seen in the past and how we have worked with different customers in the past is that you're right, Michael, that I think for online services, the churn is higher than the normal pay TV services. But part of it is also the content rights and the contract terms are a bit different right now. And that will obviously evolve. But taking a step back, but to build any kind of online or online video services or to build a pay TV service, there are three main elements of any service. One is content. You need to have compelling content, and that the customers will use. The second is the usability of the service. If it's the app, if it's a set-top box experience, and it's not just the look and feel of the app; it's the whole experience that the customers have. And the third one is I'm using it analytics more generally, but analytics more from a point of recommending the right content to the customer, getting the feedback from the customer based on the service, and also measuring these quality of experiences. So before actually customer even has a bad experience, just trying and flagging it up. And Jerome was saying that that actually is increasingly valuable information, because most of the cases when consumer has a bad experience, they don't call you, they just press cancel on the service.
Do you find, and this is to all of you, all three of you, do you find your customers typically have the right kind of analytics tools to actually adequately, properly measure churn rates and then have the ability to easily respond to those data points and meaningfully react to them?
It's a bit of a leading question, Ben, but I think the answer is no. What I think, every one of our customers, at least the big ones, they do have a range of analytics tools. I think the challenge is how to make sense of all this data and how to address it. And of course, to make sense of all the data, I think Geronimo would be more well positioned to answer that one. But I think, in terms of us at Accedo, I think we can then help our customer to actually address, if there is an identification of a certain customer group that is likely to churn, or, one possibility is to change the user experience for those users, to drive up engagement, to make things happen, to market various, content items or use cases within the service to try to engage them more. And I think that's what is missing. It's not sort of the data is there, but the conclusions and the actions are missing in many cases.
Geronimo?
Yeah, I do agree on that. So essentially, there is a lot of data out there. So when we start our conversations with customers, there's tons of data that you really can just take as an input. One of the key challenges is, first of all, most of the focus until now it's been put in on operational analytics. So it's been not a lot of focus yet, and I think this is changing definitely in making sense of the data for making business decisions. So, I mean, most of the video service providers, with some exceptions, are now at the end of the delivery phase. So they've been focused on delivering, delighting customers with incredible user experiences, with very compelling service in terms of performance of the video, and creating and building up the audience, right? So, but now I think with all this data, definitely a lot of different video service providers are putting focus in making sense in preparing the data for really being able to address the business challenges with, let's call it, business data points. And I think that's one of the challenges. I think that's one of the probably the first steps if you want to really drive a churn strategy. Is first of all look at your data and put the data in a way that really you can use it and you can automate a lot of processes for really driving to conclusion. So there's some obvious, we have mentioned some that definitely impact on churn. But I mean, let's put an example. Lack of user activity, of course, is a risk, and that's something that everybody can imagine that it's going to drive churn. But the difficult thing here is to, once you know that, how do you really segment your people, your audience? How can you split the different actions? Because we are not all the same, right? So you need to recommend specific content to that it's medium engagement. You cannot really push them a lot in the marketing, otherwise they will be upset. So there's a lot of things that you need to know in advance, and this is something that is on your data, but you really need to get the insights that it's a completely different thing to then define the strategies. So yes, I think the data is there, but now I think we are entering in a phase with a lot of video service providers really need to prepare the data for being able to tackle the next challenges of industry using data.
So step one is collecting and preparing and starting to analyze that data. What about moving to step two, which might be actually predicting what is going to happen next? So predicting churn, so you get ahead of it.
I think.
Do you want to take this, Ansul?
Yes, so I'll start. Maybe I'll hand it over to you. Also. I think
Okay.
also
No, I can summarize. Yeah, no problem.
Coming
So,
to the point of the data collection. Also, I think at one end there is one consumer who's using the service, and they are, as everyone mentioned, there are a lot of data points coming. There's data point coming from the user behavior on the app. There's data point coming from the video, what videos has the customer been watching. The data points coming from the quality of the live stream, if it's a live service, and multiple from the subscription-based offering. But now I think it's come a point before we can start making predictions. We need to start putting the data in a consistent format and measure it in a consistent format to make any sense out of it. And once because at the one side of it is still the same one customer who's giving multiple triggers, and we need to build a picture of that one customer with using different feeders that we are getting for those. And I think prediction, we're getting to the first point where we are starting to consistently measure the data and put it in the same repository. And now over a period, the good thing with churn is that there's a good backward indicator. So if there are certain triggers on your service over past few months or years, so you have a good idea of what customers, if you have a good historical evidence, you have an idea of what happened to the customers before they left the service. That can help build your prediction models. But Guillermo, maybe you want to go a bit more in detail on this.
Yeah, no, I just want to add that, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the key conclusions that we had with our customers is that it's a fully iterative process. So churn is not a one-time activity that you just put in on a machine and then the magic happens. It's really an iterative process where you really need to start, learn, and then try something new, because one of the key drivers for really making a good prediction is which attributes or which characteristics from the audience you think that are good predictors, right? So let's say that it's from the most obvious ones, tenure in the service or number of active days, but there's some others that could at the end of the day even be more predictive features, characteristics that you need to take care of. And if you put everything in a mix and you just try to make prediction, it doesn't work. So then you need to iterate and then select new characteristics, new attributes, and then start it again and see what happens and see which are the different combinations of the data points that you have that drives the better results in terms of predictions. And it's not just to build it, because making predictions means that you need to build a model, right? So you need to build a model. That means that you are gonna design and trying to model the reality in a mathematical model. But then you need to train this model, and then once it's out there, you make the prediction, and then start the most important part. That is contrast the results with the empirical real world, right? And then you need to see how far you are compared with what had happened. And that is what you need to iterate again and again. So I think definitely it's a thing really interesting, because it's a good help for really, especially for understanding which are the influencers, the main influencers for your audience to live. But it's something that you need to look at from the iterative process, and it's a learning process as well. So the technology is there, but there is a lot of business domain that you need to put on top of the different algorithms and models to really make it work. So my general conclusion here in terms of prediction is that you can definitely do it, but you need to look for something really aligned with the business domain that you want to work with. So in this case, you need to build a churn model that is fully working, operational, design, and implemented for video.
Great. So, if we assume that a happy subscriber is an engaged one, that engaged subscribers are less likely to churn, then obviously we need to find ways to engage those viewers, more. Michael, what have you found to be, the most effective ways to boost that level of engagement?
That's a great question. It's obviously depending on what kind of solution it is. But to me, one of the key aspects of engagement is to make better use of the, let's call it the front page, right? So one of the most common problems is that consumers, they have all of these apps. Many consumers now have multiple applications with slightly different focus, overlapping in some cases, but essentially they're looking for entertainment when they're opening up the apps on a TV or on a smartphone or a tablet or a computer, wherever. And if they just have a certain level of patience, and if they don't find the right thing to interact with or engage with, they will sort of just open up the other application. I think this is the moment of when you capture the consumer's engagement. And obviously, one engagement doesn't lead to churn or one non-engagement, but over time, if you can be the preferred application, the preferred destination, because the consumer have a feeling that there is always something for me in this application, you will minimize churn. So I'd say that to our customers, I always recommend, if you want to spend time at creating sort of separate versions of the homepage for sort of the high engagement users and low engagement users, first-time users, regular users, and so on. Do that on the home page and not in the rest of the application. There are many examples of how that could be used to better to improve the engagement.
Thoughts from others?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the key things. I mean, personalization means different things. One is, of course, user experience, and being enjoying the experience of not just watching content, but also for looking for content and spending time at the end of the day that you can spend on other entertainment services. But also, I think it's getting more and more relevant, also the personalization in the content catalog. I think somebody mentioned it, but it's really important that if I open the homepage and it's a homepage personalized for me, where really the proposals of the different entertainment that I can really enjoy are already there. So I don't need to spend a lot of time looking through the entire application, looking for something to watch, and then at the end I'm tired and then I'm just leave. So I think that's also one of the key things, mixing the personalization and the user experience together with the recommendations and content recommendations. I think it's a very trending topic that I think it's not solved yet, but I think definitely it's going to drive also this is one of the drivers for this increasing of the user activity that I mentioned before, that it's a key driver for churn. So if you don't spend time within your video service, you are gonna left. So definitely personalization, increase that, and that's a good starting point.
Can I challenge you a bit on the sort of a content recommendation side, Geronimo?
Of course.
The problem I find with that is that it's really you can make the best results with the high engagement users, which means that it would be the users that are less likely to churn. But the high churners, high sort of risk churners, you have less data about them. It's much harder to make relevant recommendations to those individuals. So I would actually say that I fully agree that content recommendations are important, but I think they are less important in terms of the churn prevention.
Yeah, at the end depends of the segment of the users, right? So, but definitely, if you are, for example, a serious addict, you don't necessarily need to go content by content in terms of the recommendations that you need to put in front of these people. But at least if when you enter and you are on the homepage, first thing you see are the serious, the most relevant serious catalog that you never seen, and this is part of user experience. Definitely these people will spend more time and probably they will find something easier that if they need to navigate until the section of a serious section. So I think it's a mix. It's a mix, and definitely, and you're right, depends of the cluster that we are looking at. That it's really important. We are not all the same, and the audience neither. So we need to put different strategies depending on who you are. So yes.
So
Yeah,
it's a
I think
good, yeah, go ahead, Jansu.
no, so I was going to agree. I think the content recommendation by itself is not going to solve every issue it solves all the issue of the churn, but putting content plus usability plus analytics together is going to. And I think the parallels to taking in a restaurant business could be that the consumer actually comes and just sits down at a table, and as a restaurant owner, you should know what exactly the customer is going to have. This is kind of the expectation from customers right now when they open the app. And as Jerome was saying, the landing page by itself, even if it's the first time they log on, they expect it to be relevant to them. They might do some searching, which maybe helps us better tailor the service towards them. But the expectation from the customer is that I'm going to log on and be wowed by whatever the content is going to be available on the front page itself.
So one of the great features of modern OTT consumption, of course, is that we all like to so-called binge on TV shows and go from one episode to the next and the next and so on. And I guess that is a great way to have strong engagement. Michael, are there ways to promote that kind of function?
Yeah, well, I think binge watching, which is really sort of a from a UX perspective, it's like the autoplay. I don't think that's a churn prevention per se, because actually, you have people signing up for like a 1 month free period, and they're binge watching, and they're no longer a subscriber after that. So I think that binge watching, I don't think is that correlated to churn, but of course a binge watcher, if you identify that specific individual, is then highly likely to binge watch on something new. So what you need to communicate to that person is then, well, next month we're releasing this series which should be suitable for you, and it's a great binge watching series. So I think you need to market the upcoming content in slightly different way. So there is sort of always a next series to binge watch on.
But how do you actually best position and deliver those kind of promotional campaigns to the right customers, so you're hitting those that need that message?
Well, I think you should of course identify this segment, and that's done with sort of data analysis. It's of course possible to identify. It's not that hard actually to identify the consumers that tend to watch sort of one series in a short period of time, and then you should be able to identify which series that are sort of prone to high amounts of binge watching, and then you should be able to address that to the consumers. What I find is still interesting is that the something as rudimentary as sort of email marketing to existing subscribers is actually quite limited in many cases. I'm a subscriber to quite many services, and I'm still surprised how rarely I get sort of email communication about new things coming up. Obviously, too much is spamming, but I think that this is relevant information if you can position it in a good way. And I think just something as simple as that will have impact.
So more communication.
Relevant communication, I think. It's important. Generic emails about sort of what is being launched next week is less important, of course. But if more of a sort of a targeted communication is not that difficult to do.
So one of the questions that I've wondered about, and I'd say historically, pay TV operators have tended to make it as hard as possible to leave their service, right? You tie people in, you make it so very difficult, whether it's by giving them a whole bundle of different services, broadband, telephony, mobile, in addition to pay TV, or other red tape that just makes it quite difficult to leave as a customer. But actually, in the OTT age, maybe there's an argument that it's much better practice to make it easy to leave. And the easier you make it, the more your customers will actually appreciate you and the fact that you take care of them in that way. What do you think is best practice on that, guys?
I think in the past, maybe I can start this, is in the past, what we have seen for some successful services, definitely at the point you're making is in the online, yes, it's a triple play, a quad play is a little bit less relevant in the case of OTT, especially if it's standalone service, if it's not just an online video offering coming or a multi-screen offering that's coming out of a pay TV provider. In those cases, we've seen that smart partnering with some local companies, be it magazine publishers, be it other events that are happening locally and that are relevant for the customers, that definitely, and managing the subscriptions together, definitely makes a big difference. And also even allowing for the fact of using that as a customer acquisition channel. So partnering with them, so the customers, if they sign up for one service, they get two for the price of one or something like that. That by itself also enables a great sales channel. So I would definitely say those are some of the areas, especially in the past, we've seen the customers who have started doing that very quickly. The customer acquisition cost goes down, but also the volume of customers that you can target increases multifold.
Other comments?
I don't have any strong opinions about sort of the tying consumers in. It's always a bit of a challenge to sort of force them to subscribe for 12 months and so on. But I do have opinions about this sort of a try before you buy period, which seems to be standard for SVOD services. And I think that's really a big challenge, because the penny pinchers out there, they will go for those, and they stay a couple of months, and then they are thrown out, and then they get another free subscription using some other sort of personal details, and it's sort of getting a bit silly. So I think it is possible to, I mean, you need to have something tried before you buy, but I think you know, to have all you can eat in the try before you buy, I think should be generally stopped. Should be limited to a number of sort of views, or it should be limited to maybe the first episode in each season, or something like that, to avoid sort of that part. And I think there is a lot of churn and sort of a loss of revenues just related to that practice.
Geronimo, have a view on that?
Yeah, I think it's challenging. I think we are in a new era, and I think trying to tie up customers to it's not easy. What I'm seeing like more interesting in this part is what some of the pay TV operators are doing, bundling OTT services. And in this case, what it's happening is that, I mean, the end user is becoming, he has like a loan try before they buy, so they have probably even 6 months. I'm seeing offerings, but you have OTTs for 6 months before you need to start paying, and that's a good, I mean, window for really convince the customer that really they have something with value. I think that's a key thing. You need to provide value, otherwise tying up customers in the OTT era, I think it's really challenging. But the OTT, as far as I know, talking with the pay TV providers in OTT, this strategy is working reasonably well, and customers really are discovering OTT services through pay TV operators in a mainstream at a mainstream scale. That it's, I think it's helping both.
Here's a question that's come in. So and it's very current, given the World Cup on now, when operators have paid a fortune to secure, you know, high-profile sports rights. How can they actually attract and keep the customers after a big event has passed? Who wants to take that one?
I can at least start with my observations. I think my understanding is that it's really hard to create a business case out of sports, but because there is that tendency of sort of discontinuing the subscription after the event is over that you're really interested in. But what it does is that it creates sort of marketing value, it creates brand awareness, and of course it has to be implemented in the correct ways. You need to retain all those customer details so you can address those at a later stage. And of course, you know, the overall service needs to be tied into the same. I mean, if you have a, I don't know, movie service, and then you just throw on bolt on sports on top of that won't work, right? You need to have a full service that could justify that. But my fundamental opinion is that events like World Cup or EPL or something, it's really hard to create a business case for that.
Anyone else want to chip in?
I think I would.
For those out there, you know, feel free to submit other questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're right. I think on a standalone basis, Michael, it's hard to just build a business case around sports rights. But also, I think when you're doing a business case for sports live events, you have to factor in a certain amount of churn after the event is over. But I think looking at it more positively is that the customers, it's also proven the customers who watch live sports or live events are far more engaged, and so that in turn also means the level of analytics and insights that you get from those consumers is far more richer. So there are much better ways of targeting the next event that's happening, which could be another football event, for example, that's happening, or tennis event or something for those consumers. So definitely just accepting the fact that the churn is going to go increase after the event is over is maybe it's temporarily true, but there are ways of bringing it back up by better insights into the user behavior.
Yeah, I do agree with both. I think there's also a component that could be a track, that is the content connection. So all of us have like a preferred content type, right? So if you are definitely watching World Cup, this is your main driver for subscribing to this specific OTT service. But all of us have like a secondary content type we like to watch. So here the challenge, or at least what people are looking, what they are at the same time that they are providing the OTC service for sports, is apart from what you guys have mentioned, that is of course having a lot of data that is going to help you later on to target a new event, a new sports, is trying to engage people with the next nearest content that they would like to watch, and trying to engage these guys with that kind of content. I think that's also a strategy that definitely can drive you some revenues and reduce churn, and hopefully a certain number of people that otherwise will churn because they just know that you are providing sports will stay in the service looking at other different content. So that's also something that it's interesting to look at.
Vanessa, we're almost time up. Do we have we got time for one more question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. We've got a couple of minutes before the hour. We having any more questions?
So we've talked a lot about subscription-based business models. There are obviously other ways to skin a cat, other ways to make money from this business, and you know, a lot of people are successfully using advertising supported video on demand, and of course you have hybrid versions between the two with freemium type business models. Do you think that is a route to reducing or getting more, you know, reducing churn, getting more engagement, perhaps particularly in Asia, where I believe Michael, you and Geronimo are right now?
Yes, we're currently in Singapore.
So what's your view on that?
I'll let Geronimo and Anshul answer this.
I can take it maybe to start with, Ben. It's, from an advertising point of view, I think definitely in certain markets, advertising where there's a large amount of volume of users, and if there's a content that is not very differentiated, there are ways of actually create a service just on advertising. But also what we're increasingly seeing is that even if you have a smaller group, but you have it's a very focused audience that you have for your product. I think the making use of smart advertising and the rich analytics, you can actually drive advertising rates much higher than the standard. And there are ways of actually monetizing it, not just only on the video content, but tertiary services around it. So some of the publishers and broadcasters are trying out those models right now. So non-subscription based models.
Can I add something here? I think here especially in Asia, that's true that based on the big volumes, right? So you have market where especially if you're a pan regional service, you have access to a lot of subscribers compared with other markets in Europe, or so that's true that advertisement is becoming crucial. But also what we have seen with certain companies and customers is that they are trying to put also monetization, as you mentioned, and put subscriptions up top of the advertisement world, and creating this freemium service, trying to push people and to the higher tier where they are starting to pay for a subscription that in most cases are a low pricing subscription. And it's been challenging, to be honest. I mean the experiences that I know from tier one customers in APAC is that it's not being easy to move these customers from freemium to premium subscribers at all. So I think we will see more and more experiments around this, but I think it's not an answer right now if it's a good strategy or it's better just to stay on advertisement, waiting that hopefully digital advertisement will boom, or it's better to just start it with subscription. I think there's a lot of companies trying different models, but I don't think it's the mixed model. It's yet proof that it's a good one.
So no magic bullet solution. Well, I think that's a good place to draw things to a halt.